Welcome. I am so excited to be interviewing today's guest. We have Matt Bowyer, author of Recalibrate, entrepreneur, former high stakes gambler, federal defendant, redemption story in real time. From billion-dollar betting and Vegas high roller suites to 29 federal agents raiding his home at gunpoint, Matt Bower's story isn't just gripping, it's real, it's raw, and it's radically transformational. For over a decade, Matt was the face behind the curtain of high stakes gambling in America. He was one of the most recognized casino gamblers in the country, betting millions and building relationships with athletes, celebrities, and casino executives alike. Behind the scenes, he also ran one of the largest underground sports betting operations in the US, processing billions in wagers. But that's only part of the story. Matt also ran the largest retail commodity brokerage in the country for 11 years, leading massive teams, managing risk, and playing at the highest levels of legal finance before crossing the line into illegal bookmaking. On October 5th, 2023, the facade shattered. 29 federal agents stormed his home, seizing cash, jewelry, hard drives, and any remaining sense of control. In the aftermath, Matt became a scapegoat in Las Vegas, blacklisted, banned, and blamed as the fall guy for widespread casino fines and alleged money laundering failures. Once courted by Vegas, his name became taboo behind closed doors. But instead of running from it, Matt chose to own it, all of it. He wrote Recalibrate, his book that at the time this comes out, it will be released. So I'll pop the link below. It's a powerful memoir that chronicles the rise, fall, and rebuilding of a man who lost everything and found something greater. Not just a cautionary tale, Recalibrate is a blueprint for accountability, transformation, and living with purpose. Today, Matt is a father of five, husband, business owner, and relentless truth teller. He owns a Brazilian jiu-jitsu studio, mentors young men on mindset and ownership, and uses his platform to help others avoid the same mistakes. He's not here to be liked. He is here to be real. And this isn't a highlight reel. It's a real life unfiltered. So thank you so much for being here today, Matt. And as I was saying to you, I came across you on Instagram. And so for anyone, go follow Matt on Instagram. You will be not just for his story, but just for who he is in the process of showing up, the courage, the power, rebuilding. And that's exactly what I saw, because I had no idea who you were. I had no idea about the story. It just happened to pop up in my Instagram feed. And I was drawn in because you were sharing the story about how now you're literally weeks away from sentencing, but at the time you were a couple of months, maybe 2 or 3 months away from sentencing.
Sure.
But yet here you were showing up. And you weren't just showing up telling your story from a place of victimhood. You were showing up in a really empowered way. And you were showing up through all of it, telling your truth, making a difference. But at the same time, you were talking about how, you gave your wife an out. You said, you can leave. I wouldn't blame you. In fact, I recommend you do. And she said, no, what are you talking about? I'm here. And I was just like, wow, there is so much to learn and so much depth in this, because not only the courage and power, but then the loyalty of someone just not even thinking about it, but just going, what are you talking about? No, I'm here. And, I went through your Instagram and I remember thinking, wow, imagine, you're showing up through all of this. And I know at the time I was making excuses, maybe not to show up in my potential. I've got a bigger vision, and I was still somewhat hiding away a little bit. And I'm like, what the fuck is my excuse? Here's this guy showing up through all of this, and what's my excuse? And so it jolted me into that. Like it called me out. Just you showing up called me out on my own bullshit. And I thought, well, like I was like, I'm going to interview him one day. And at the time, the podcast wasn't released. It was a thought in my mind. I'm like, I've got to interview him on my podcast. And it was literally, I'd been delaying that as well. And leaning into
Sure.
my next edge, I was like, 5 days ago, sitting on the lounge going, okay, time to release my podcast. And like, I was like, oh, I've got to interview Matt. Within
That's
five
amazing.
minutes, I messaged you. I
How long did it
messaged
take me
you.
to respond, by the way?
I think it took you about an hour to respond. I was like, you know what? All I
Yeah.
can do is ask him. And I like was
Right.
genuine. Like I was like, I want to interview. I've got a small following. I haven't even released a podcast yet.
Right.
And I
Right.
was
Of
like, worst case scenario, he ignores me or says no.
course.
He responded and we're like happy to have a chat. And it's like, oh my goodness, excellent. And so we hopped on the phone and I just, I feel like I've already gotten so much from our interaction.
Sure.
And one of the things I want to add is something that really landed for me after we spoke. And I thought, wow, if I share this, people, I think this will land deeply for a lot of people because a lot of people hold themselves back because they're holding on to regrets of the past choices they've made. And a lot of clients I have, we're working through, they're like, oh, well, I made this past choice. I feel shameful. I feel regret. And I remember thinking, when I saw your stuff on Instagram, there was not one bit of judgment. There was not one bit of, oh, he's done this or whatever, like nothing like that. All I saw was this man's got so much courage. Like imagine the amount of courage you would have and power and resilience and determination to just be showing up in the midst of it all and to, really be rebuilding. And I remember thinking the other day, I was like, why haven't I seen that in myself? Maybe I should give myself that too. And so I really want people listening to this when you hear Matt's story and you hear, like, you look at those things and look at maybe what you're seeing in that, seeing the courage, the resilience, the, you know, ability to turn it all around and give that to yourself as well.
Well, thank you, first of all, for reaching out. I want to start by saying you actually mentioned that you were not putting yourself out there, but you did. That's why we're here, and that's why we're having this conversation and doing this podcast. So I give you credit for actually just doing something. It's everybody's guilty of saying things they want to do, and we all struggle sometimes with doing it, following
Mm-hmm.
through. So kudos for you for reaching out to me, and I'm really glad you did because we wouldn't be having this podcast otherwise.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, I just think of the conversation we're going to have and the amount of people that get to be impacted and the ripple effect it's going to create as a result. So
That's
thank you so much for being here. And
No, no, thank you for having me, truly. And I'm really happy that I was able to inspire you in any way possible. And in truth, that's kind of when I started my Instagram, my social media, which I've never been on in my whole life, probably 10 months ago, actually, I think it was September is when I started it. And, I'm 50 years old. I just turned 50. And the reason didn't have social media was because I was doing something illegal and I didn't want to show the government anything I was doing or display any arrogance or ego.
mm,
And I wasn't inviting them to come over and do what happened. So, to be honest, this was very awkward for me initially, putting my story out there. But after I was raided on October 5th, as you said, and about a year went by, and I just stood there and I bit my tongue, and my attorneys didn't want me to say anything. I had media at my home almost every day for literally 6 months, walking my dog. They'd follow me with cameras, follow my wife, try to get us to talk. And it was hard because I was being sensationalized in this, over here in the United States, all over the news. And even my children were getting some heat at school. And that was a tough moment for me because I've always been a person that believes standing up for yourself and fighting back. Especially when you know you're right, or in my case, I did something wrong. But when I say I knew I was right, I had the right to defend myself. I have the right to give some sort of version of my narrative and at least tell my side of the story. And I wasn't able to do that. I was muzzled. And I finally said, you know what? Fuck that. I'm not that person that's going to stand by and continue to be attacked in a negative manner. So I made a decision. I started filming myself and telling my story. And slowly but surely, I got more out of it selfishly than I was giving. And I didn't mean for that to occur. Like even to this day, I think I'm getting more out of my Instagram and my, TikTok and even my YouTube channels and things that are starting to grow because as I share my story and I'm honest and authentic, people are actually reaching out to me, telling me what I'm doing for them in their life.
Mhm.
And it's actually making me feel better about my situation in a sense that I could help somebody. Maybe like you, it puts you out there. Maybe this podcast is happening right now and you're going to display and, get yourself out there and do something bigger and better. If I can be the reason for that, then that makes me feel good. And
Mhm.
if somebody has a gambling addiction or an alcohol or drug problem, and if I help them prevent maybe, continuing that addiction or avoid it, or just making a better choice in life, I think the main thing that I try to teach or inspire people is their mindset, because we all have a story. We all have problems. We all have issues and things to work on, and every family has got problems going on within it. But if you can learn to really power your mind to get through these adversities and actually show the strength to run into the fire as opposed to away from it, there's a great analogy that I use. It's actually a story about these. I think it's bulls. I might be wrong. Cows. It doesn't matter. There's a storm, right? And the storm's coming. And if it's bulls or cows, whatever it is, they actually run into the storm.
Mm.
And the other animals, I think it's sheeps, they run away from the storm. And what
Wow.
happens is in running into the storm, you actually deal with the storm and it passes, right? The
Mm.
ones that are running away from the storm are the storm is coming, the anxiety is building, and they're feeling all these negative emotions, and they're feeling the storm, and then they're running with it, and then they're in it longer because they're not dealing with the adversity, they're not dealing with the fire. So that analogy is kind of what the way I feel about me and my life, and I've always been that guy that I have another funny example when I was, and I've never told this story on camera yet, so you were the first to hear it. But when I was young, I was kind of the smallest kid in my school growing up. In fact, I wrestled and I was literally 89 pounds my freshman year, so I was tiny, right? And so I always had a little chip on my shoulder. And then when I was 16 years old, I was chasing this girl in high school. She was really cute and a pretty girl. And I was a little boy to her because I really was. I was so small. And she wanted to date the senior and, this big tall guy, whatever. So I went to a party and, I had a few drinks as a young boy of 16 and I had this courage. So I was really upset with the guy. And even though it wasn't his fault and, she was attracted to him. And so I picked a fight and I ended up punching the guy and then we ended up going to the ground. And long story short, we get this fight. All my fault, right? And I woke up the next day and even though we got into a literally full brawl, I felt so ridiculous because here I created this, altercation with this guy who had nothing to do with me. And I was really just jealous that this girl was after him. So rather than like stewing it, the next morning after we got in a full fist fight and literally, knuckled up and a bloody face that's dried up or whatnot, I called him and I said, "Hey, I'd like to meet you." And he's like, he thought I was trying to pick another fight. And I said, honestly, no, I want to apologize. And I'd like to look you in the eyes and apologize because it was bothering me so much the way I handled things as a 16-year-old kid that
Mm.
I addressed this issue with somebody else that really the problem was within myself, right? But the point of the story is we became friends and I apologized and he had a lot of respect for that. But I don't like to wallow or sit in anything. If I have an issue, whether it's within myself or whatever, run to the fire, deal with your adversities and learn from them. And you will be that much better in everything you do in life. And that is the situation I'm in now. And I'm trying to show my children when you have these issues, I made some poor choices. I broke the law. I may not agree with the laws. And sometimes that's the situation, but I knew what they were going into it. And even though gambling in the United States is legal in 38 states, I live in California as a state that it's illegal. And so I have to tell my children, I knew that, I chose this, and I got to deal with it. And I'm looking at possibly a 2 to 3 to 4 year prison sentence in 23 days. I go in front of the judge. And my 14-year-old daughter has been crying for 2 weeks straight about it, because she knows that that's a strong possibility. And those are hard moments. But the key here is to teach and tell them, you know what, I made a poor choice, be accountable, deal with it, and learn from the situation.
Have you seen that already have a ripple effect on your children as far as the taking accountability piece? Like, as far as, because obviously that was very ingrained in you, even, you're like, I did this, I'm taking accountability, even like, as you said, as a 16-year-old. Um,
Right.
when you were like, I chose this. And
Mhm.
now in actually modeling that in such a large way, have you seen that it's already had a ripple effect in them, or are they still at a little bit of a young age there?
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet. I think only because nothing's really happened that I know of in their life that they've had to deal
Mm,
with any other than what they're dealing with in regards to me. So of course, I'm hoping that they'll become stronger. And clearly, when we go to court, because they'll all be there except for my 4-year-old boy, I won't bring him. They're going to be there for support, and they're going to have a tough day, as I am. And when the judge lays the gavel down and tells the father of five that he's going to prison, I'm going to be in shambles in the inside, but I got to
mm,
be strong for my family and my wife, and that's going to be a tough moment for them. So that'll be their first test of adversity. And I'm not saying they can't cry, or of course that's normal. It's
yeah.
okay to cry, but being strong and dealing with that adversity, and sometimes people resort to drugs or alcohol or negative things.
Mm,
We all, I like to have a few cocktails here and there just to kind of numb pain in my life, or just get away from maybe even your current situation. We're all guilty of certain things, but I want them to just handle it by being strong, communicating with me and my wife and discussing it. And whether they cry or not, or just need to have a big hug and talk it out, but being strong in that moment. So that's going to be really a test, which is in 23 days, as I said.
absolutely. And I mean, it's such valuable, like the way that you're shaping them now as they're growing up, you're going to see it as in who they become as adults. And um,
Yeah.
how are you navigating right now with, because as you said, you've got your court date in 23 days. You're still
Mhm.
showing up every day on social media. And I'm sure there's moments where you feel like just you don't want to, or, like I know
Yeah.
that you've mentioned, there's a bigger vision that you're here for, and you're showing up every day, you're navigating the uncertainty and the fact that it's 23 days away. So it's getting more real by the day.
Right.
You're navigating, being a present husband, being a present father, and just everything in between. So, how are you navigating all of that while still showing up? Like, is there something that deeper part driving you? As you said, there's the example for your children. I know you've mentioned the bigger vision. Is that it, or is there something that's just driving you to just go, yep, even when I don't feel like it, I'm going to keep going?
Yeah. Great question. When I think it resorts back to when I was a 12-year-old boy. And so I was raised here in Orange County, California. And my family, I had three brothers, and my family was, I would say, middle class. We were raised where we didn't really struggle for the first 12 years of my life for anything. We had a river house and a jet skis and boats and toys and all the things that a young boy would want. I had for the first 12 years of my life. So financially, there was no struggle, and then even emotionally, my family was kind of the perfect family from the outside, because again, four boys. My mom was amazing. My dad was a great guy, but he had a drinking problem. My father did. So as that drinking problem escalated, because he was a Vietnam War vet, he came home and was running. He was an entrepreneur running a bail bonds company and an air tool supply company. So we were raised very, materialistically perfect, and then emotionally things were great. And then all of a sudden, the alcohol became a bigger problem. He was drinking up to 40 beers a day, smoking 3 packs of cigarettes, and eating one meal, because when you drink that much, you really don't eat. So he ran the business out of the house. He really was just bored and clearly was having an addiction. And that escalated. And after about 3 or 4 rehabs with our family and my mom trying to get him help, he just wasn't seeing the light. So my point in this is like that vision of the rug being pulled out occurred at 12. And I
Mm.
became kind of a therapist to my mother at 12, which I know she didn't mean to, but my older brothers were in high school. One was graduating, and my little brother was only 8. And so I was really close with my mom. And so I was kind of her therapist. And there was moments she put the phone, to my ear and say, talk to your dad, because he was trying to work his way back in the house. Anyway, that was a little traumatic for me, but what I got out of that was resilience and becoming. I never wanted my children and my family to go through that. So to this day, those moments deep down like come out in me. And I say that because I make sure, and I have up until this point, that my family has never struggled with anything really. This is our first major struggle, right? Because now there's a very good chance as a father, my number one job is to provide and protect. And I can't guarantee that. In fact, I'm probably going to lose that opportunity, which is the hardest thing I've dealt with in my whole life because guilt for that for me it personally is something I'll never ever be able to get past as far as having that guilt. I'll mask it as much I can. I'd be lying if I said I'll be able to get rid of it because I won't, but I will do my best to continue to be the most amazing father I can. But the rest of my life that's going to haunt me. That being said, when I was a young boy, all the resilience, and this is all in my book, Recalibrate, obviously, that's why I named it that, because I've always recalibrated, and when things happen, there's so many ways people can go, right? And burying your head in the sand and, masking it with other addictions or problems is common when people deal with serious tragedy or adversity. I have learned to just use my mind and just overcome it as best I can, and then learn from it and become stronger and better. And the more I've done that, the stronger I've become in my life. And then the more I've realized that the potential in myself and what I can accomplish is far more than you even know. David
Mm.
Goggins is a great example. I mean, the guy, I'm sure you've heard of him, right?
Oh,
He's,
yeah, yeah. I've got his
yeah,
book. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, look at what this guy does. Like, you think you can't do these things. I think I can't do these things. Well, actually, you can. And some of them are just, you think unobtainable, but they're really not. It's your mind. I mean, he says it well. And he was a 320-pound fat kid and, was lazy and had no work ethic, et cetera. And now he's, does everything. But
Mm.
I believe that's in all of us, and we all struggle with finding the maximum potential to reach it and grab it and use it. And it's like a gas tank, and the more you could find the gas to fuel, this fire, the more you're going to produce in life. And it's not always about money, right? Some of it's just mindset of being a better husband or wife or brother or sister or just human being, whatever your drives are or things you want to work on. And they actually obtain to everything in your life. It's not just money. It's not just work. It's not even just working out. It could be eating. It could be anything, whatever your passions are. But if you can find that extra gas tank and grab the gas to fuel this fire, I mean, you're a dangerous person in a positive way. And
Mm.
I think I've learned to do that better than most. And right now, I'm really tapping that tank as much as possible because I have my weak moments, of course. I mean, I feel we all have insecurities, right? I'm 50 years old. I'm losing my hair. I feel my body fat's 9%. I want it to be, once was 4.5. I was in, when I was 35 years old, right? So we all struggle with these moments. And if you don't, then if you don't have any vanity, then you'll just let yourself go. So there's a
Mm.
fine line there too, right? But I think because I won't allow myself to pour me self-pity for very long, and then when I do have these moments, I have kind of triggers within myself to snap out of it and like find that extra gas tank. And sometimes it's music or just reminding myself of what happened with my father and reminding myself I can never ever be that. And I love my father. He passed away young, 55, because of the alcoholism. But and I don't blame him. He had a disease, but I make sure I use that as a driving force to kind of remind myself to never allow myself to go down a path of that sort. And it doesn't even have to be alcohol. It could be gambling. It could be because I do have a gambling addiction, and I'm guilty of. I've blown over $50 million gambling, more than most people will make in 5 lifetimes. But I'm not perfect, and I've learned from those mistakes. And even to this day, I'm continuing to learn. And I want to say this, like when my weak moments come, I get up sometimes, I don't sleep that well. I get up at 2:30 in the morning. We've actually, DM'd a few times, and that's 2:30 in the morning when I'm awake, DMing someone like you, right? And responding about conversations. And some people will say, "Isn't it 2:30 in the morning?" I'm like, "Yeah, I just woke up." And it's because I have anxiety. And then so I'll jump in my sauna and or my cool plunge and kind of like test myself. Nobody wants to get in that 43-degree water at 3 in the morning, right? And even though it's for 6, 7 minutes, the minute I get out of that, it's like, okay, I just went through hell for 6 minutes. I feel better just testing myself and pushing myself and doing something positive. And, it's like I accomplished something in a weak moment. So weird little things like that for me work. Most
Mm,
people don't have the drive or push to do that. I mean, David Goggins, I keep saying that because what he does is above and beyond 99.9% of the world,
mm.
but it's just pushing yourself. And he says it, do something that sucks every day, right? Find that suck. And then when you do that, it's like whenever you're doing something that doesn't suck, it all of a sudden you realize you're still doing things that other people aren't willing to do.
Absolutely, absolutely. And one of the things that I noticed in your social media and the conversation that we had the other day, and in because I always look at patterns, like I just always see patterns, and I was like, wow, okay, so anything he puts his mind to, he's created success. Like, so
Mhm.
from in another interview that I listened to as well, you mentioned, and I'll let you tell this story, but you mentioned the drive to with a trip for your mum, and then in becoming, working in a mailroom and the broker. And I was like, everything that you've done, it doesn't matter what it is, when you've gone, I'm going to be the best at this, or I'm achieving this, or I'm going for this, you've always created massive success, and you've
Right.
always just gone for it and really achieved beyond what most people would. And it just happened to be that you've directed that energy. And then there's, as you said, there was a gambling addiction that was also the driver, and probably like a few different things. So you just happen to create your version of success in a way that wasn't was going to come crashing down. And so now you've written Recalibrate, and you're
Mhm.
going a different direction. So of course you're going to create massive success in this way by impacting people and have a deeper sense of fulfillment. But
For
can
sure.
you take us back to your journey from you mentioned about your dad, but then from there, like growing up, to what led to, because I'm sure someone doesn't overnight say, okay, I'm going to get into illegal gambling. Like there's a journey
Mhm.
and something that leads to that decision.
Sure. Well, I think the first 12 years of my life, as I said, were the perfect childhood to a degree, meaning there's no such thing as perfect, but for me, it was really
Mm,
ideal. So I was kind of shyer kid the first 12 years. My personality has always been very exuberant and outgoing and, extrovert, but not one my first 12 years. I wasn't shy, but I was definitely less exuberant. And then when this happened in my family with my father, I didn't become the father of the family, of course, because I was 12, but like I did become somewhat of a leader of my little brother, and then even with my mother. So trying to be there, just support wise, because my two older brothers they were like I said, high school or graduating, they were doing their own thing, and I kind of took charge. And so at 12, I started actually about 13, 14. I was delivering the Orange County Register. I was a paper boy, and I became the number one paper boy. And then at 14, I broke the record in our county for sales of selling the Orange County Register. That's a newspaper here. And I beat every kid there was. And there was like 50 kids in the county that were selling the paper door to door. And I was the youngest. I was 14. Most of them were 17, 18. And so, of course, they had experience over me and et cetera. But I beat all of them, and I won this trip, as you said a minute ago, for my mom to Hawaii. That was a pivotal moment for me because that was my first taste of actual success. It wasn't, a big dollar amount, but it was something where I beat 50 kids, at
mm,
sales for a long period of time. I think it was like a 3 month, campaign, let's call it. And I destroyed them. There wasn't even close. Every night we'd come in, how many sales do you have? You put up on a board, let's just say you sold 30 new subscriptions. Everyone there was 12 or 14 or there wasn't even, they had no chance. And so the fact that I, destroyed everybody there and continued just to put them in the dust, I started building more confidence, right? And then I started running a gambling poker ring at like 15, 16 in my mom's home because she wasn't home very much. She's working three jobs. And I was actually making probably close to what she was making at like 15, 16, which is really hard to do as a young boy, right? I just got my driver's license. I purchased my own vehicle at, it was a $3,700 truck, which this go back 34 years ago. No kid was doing that. The parents would have to buy them a car or they couldn't afford one, but they definitely weren't buying a truck outright on their own. And I was hustling baseball cards in the local neighborhood. I was taking sports bets at 15, 16, which were small, but I was hustling. I was finding ways to make money. So I had all these different little things going. And then I started selling marijuana, believe it or not, which was illegal then. It's legal now in the states of California. But I was selling, marijuana out of our gas station that I worked at. So I had a job at the gas station. And it was really the reason I got the job there was so I could take sports bet and have like a hub where I could take bets, sell marijuana, and really get free gas and just kind of, it was just my little office. Okay. And so I was doing all these little hustles. And my mom was wondering why I never had to ask her for money and why I always had money. And come to find out, once she found the scale of my operation of marijuana, about 17 and a half years old, she kicked me out of the house. And that was our first, learning curve of trials and tribulations of doing something I really wasn't supposed to. But I didn't really learn a lesson. I just moved out and continued on my path, which ended up actually, once I had to find a place to live, my ex-wife and I, we got an apartment. My high school sweetheart met her at 15, and we moved out at 18 and got an apartment with a roommate. And living on your own at 18, no college experience, really no. I had a job, but it was a endless job, meaning I was making nothing. And I ended up working two jobs. I was working from 6 a.m. to 2 at the airport, stocking the gift shops with magazines and candy and et cetera. And then I would leave there and drive to Massimo Clothing Company, which here in the United States is, I don't know if you have that
Yeah,
in
we do. Yep.
okay. So anyway, I became friends with him. Ironically, he was at a federal case with his wife, the actress, Lori Loughlin. But long story short, I worked for him for, a little bit of time. So I was, taking clothes from and stocking the vans to go shipped out to different locations. So these were jobs that I was paid basically minimum wage.
Mm.
So I was working basically 16 hours a day to just pay rent and live in an apartment. And I had zero, vision of going anywhere. And so I looked to my ex-wife and I said, her name was Monica. I said, Monica, there's no way we can keep doing this. I can't go to college. I don't want to go to college. That wasn't my thing. I couldn't afford it. And she couldn't because she was working a job. And I was like, we got to do something. So we decided at that moment my mom allowed me to move back home and she lost the house we grew up in. So my mother rented a mobile home in Dana Point, California, which is a very affluent area here in Orange County. But a mobile home was like pride swallowing to see my mom go into a mobile home. That to me, I always vision, sadly, I don't want to sound judgmental, but white trash living in a mobile
Yeah.
home. So, for me, it was very pride swallowing, but you got to do what you got to do. So I moved into a mobile home. My mom, it was a two-bedroom, and my little brother was in one room. My mom was in the other. So my ex-wife and I slept on the couch. So here I am with this mobile home park, sleeping on a couch with, I just quit these jobs because they were going nowhere. And I went to the local restaurant in the neighborhood. And it was a Mexican restaurant chain. And there it was brand new. It was a beautiful restaurant. And I was like, you know what, 18 years old, a waiter, you could make really good money for a young adult. And needless to say, my ex-wife became pregnant. So the timing was terrible because I could barely take care of myself. And clearly it wasn't a planned, baby. But at 18 years old, I was with the woman I planned on marrying. And clearly the right thing to do is raise a child. And, so we decided to obviously figure it out. Well, in that process, I went to this restaurant and I walk in and the general manager says, I can't hire you as a waiter. You have no experience. And I was like, experience? I mean, I'm serving food. I think I can handle that. But he didn't know me. So he gave me a job as the busboy. And I was like, busboy, okay. So I'm serving chips and salsa, literally. And the way I've lived my life, again, I've done everything to 110%. So I was really good at my job. And even though it was a very selfless job, I just started being myself. I was very charismatic with customers coming in. They started coming in asking to sit in my section. Well, I didn't have a section. I was a busboy. So they were like, well, we can't do that. And they're like, well, we really enjoyed his service. So I started outshining the waiters and making actually more tips than they were. And eventually that led to me meeting customers, and they would come in and I built relationships. Well, in that relationship, I met this couple who was very successful, 28 years old. His name is Mickey Dillon. He's in my book. And we basically became, let's call it customer friends, based on him coming in the restaurant. And his wife offered me an opportunity to come in for an interview. So I said, sure. She says, well, you don't even know what it is. I says, I don't care. You guys seem successful, and I definitely don't want to serve chips and salsa forever. So I got in my little hoopty car and I drive down to this office. I go to Marshall's and buy a cheap, tie and a cheap shirt. And I walk into this office, and as I pull in, there's Mercedes, Ferraris. I mean, every car you could dream of for a young man. And I walk in this building, and the atmosphere and the energy was just vibrant. And I had no idea what it was. So I come in for this interview, and the same gentleman who was so kind and tipped me well was a different gentleman, meaning it was the same guy, but it was a whole different interview. It was, why have you done nothing with your life? You're 18. You just told me that you just knocked up a woman that you're not married to. You have never been to college. You have no money. You have nothing going for you. Why would I hire you? And I felt belittled. So I left the interview dejected. But ironically, I got called for a second interview. So I went back, and it was another hour long, I would call it a beat down. And after about 45 minutes, I just said, listen, I stood up for myself. I said, I don't know what you want me to tell you. All I could say is that nobody here is going to work harder than me. Nobody here has got the grind and determination that I have, and nobody's willing to learn and be, somebody that you haven't seen turn their life around as I am. So if you want to sit here and question me or tell me what I haven't done, or you can judge me based on what I can do.
Mm.
He liked my fight, my answers. So he gave me the opportunity. So I got a job, and the job was $1,200 a month, working running a mailroom, which I didn't care, and it was 60 hours a week. And after taxes, I probably made, I don't know, $800-900. But I was just happy to be in an opportunity and an environment where there's winners and people making real money, because I saw the vision now. So after about 8 months, 9 months, I worked there. Um, that job was key. I didn't realize that I was actually his personal assistant as well as running this mailroom. So we started to develop a really good personal relationship. And I learned so much in that 8 or 9 months. And what I didn't realize is back then there was no internet. So when the clients would call in to trade commodities, by the way, this is what this was a commodity brokerage firm, trading places, Eddie Murphy movie, if you've ever seen that, trading crude oil and pork bellies and soybeans. That's what we were doing. And I would take the sales call first, and because I was the first contact of the company, and then figure out what they wanted. And if there was a prospect, I would transfer it to the broker of the day. And in that process, I would hit mute, send the call through, and listen to the sales call. Well, as soon as I sent it through, I was supposed to hang up. Obviously, if I had no more phone calls, I would just pretend that I hung up and stay on mute and listen. So I was getting a sponge of really good sales, and I loved it. So then I started studying for the Series 3 exam, which is a license out here that you have to get to be a commodity broker. And I studied as hard as I could. And I went to the owner about 3 months later and said, I'm ready to take the Series 3 exam. And he says to me, you don't even know what the exam's about, and you're not an assistant broker. I'm not going to sponsor you to take the exam. So I hand him a stack of flashcards. I said, if I don't answer a question, then we can have this conversation. So he asked me a few questions and says, wow, okay. He goes, it's $450 to sponsor you for the test, and we really don't want to do that. And I said, how about this? If I don't pass, you could fire me. I'll risk my job. And he's like, you're willing to risk your job and your career to take an exam that you're not ready for? I said, yeah. So he sponsored me. I passed barely. There's two parts to the test I'll never forget. It was one of the best days of my life. And I drove back to the brokerage firm with this national exam that shows that I just passed. and he immediately promoted me. So I hired a replacement, and I went and worked because of all these things I've done. He put me with a top broker. So fast forward for about another year, we were number one every single month, and we broke all the records in the company. And then I got lucky because at this time he was opening a brand new brokerage house, which was a discount firm, and he needed somebody to open it. So here I am, just turning basically 21 years old, and he gave me the opportunity of a lifetime to go run and start a new brokerage firm. So I continued to, shine and do what I had to do, and I proved myself to, get this commodity firm going by bringing in kids from my neighborhood who didn't have careers, didn't have opportunities that I had. Now I'm the guy who's making real money. And I made about seven or $800,000 a year at 21 years old.
Wow.
So by the end of my 21st birthday, I purchased, this is a moment that I'm so proud to say, I purchased the home that my parents lost.
Wow.
Ironically, the timing was really weird. It came up for sale and I purchased it. So when I was 21, my daughter had been born. She's 2 years old. My family, we moved into this house where I grew up as a boy. And I moved in and I was sleeping in my parents' bedroom, which was a little weird at first. But I was so proud to buy this big home and, have this like sense of pride of living in the house my parents lost. And it was like a great moment for me. Yeah. So that was kind of to answer your question, and there was a long version of it, but from 12 years old to 21, those adversities and those trials and tribulations are what led me to tasting success and then knowing you can overcome it. Once you taste it and you actually outshine your own brain and your mind of things that you weren't capable of, you didn't know, you start to realize, wow, I'm capable of so much more than I really thought. And now I had this extra confidence. I had
Mm.
money. I had everything I wanted, I thought, right? I had Mercedes, I had a big home, and I was still chasing more because I've always wanted more. And my gambling, my personal gambling was growing, growing. And then therefore, I started bookmaking, running a sports book, and at 21, I had the best atmosphere for that. You have guys that are working in my company that are 21 to 50 years old who are making very large amounts of money, who are most just like the movie Wall Street or
Mm.
Boiler Room, or,
Literally,
they're,
it reminds me of that movie. I was thinking that.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
what it was. In fact, we all went, ironically. So I left the commodity business at 30. And when the movie Wolf of Wall Street came out, we all got back together and went to the theater and rented out a theater just for all of our brokers, and we watched it. And it was pretty cool because when Jordan Belfort, was doing his thing, everyone was in the firm. All these guys were now, I don't know, whatever. I was probably 40 when this came out. We're all saying my name as Jordan Belfort because I was the number one retail commodity broker in the world. Of course, what we did was legal. I want to say that, and we weren't robbing people or defrauding them. But sales wise, I was the top broker,
Mm.
and I broke every record in the country for the next 11 years as a retail commodity trader.
Amazing. Wow. And so
Yeah.
then obviously there was that. And people probably who maybe don't get, because I'm guessing that maybe there was, as you said, you were driven for more. So it was like there was always more, there was never enough. But was there like the underneath the addiction as well, whether it be the gambling or whether it be because when someone's not feeling fulfilled within themselves, and I know you've spoken about this, when there's an internal emptiness, it's like you think the next thing's going to fulfill that emptiness or that void or whatever want to call it. And so there's always that drive for what now, what now, what now. And then obviously it's you know very much like dopamine driven, so then there's always that need for I need more because what I've got now isn't giving me that same feeling. So would you
Yeah.
say
Well,
what was sort of driving you to then go and to take it as big as you took it?
I think because to this day, I clearly have a gambling addiction. So that may never go away.
Hmm.
I don't gamble now because I can't. So I don't gamble anymore because I want it to stop. So when I see my therapist, which I'm required to by the court, We talk about this because when people quit addiction, gambling, alcohol, drugs, whatever, it's really they have to look in the mirror. Yeah, so when you have a gambling addiction, you have to look in the mirror and decide, or a drug or alcohol addiction, the person has to look in the mirror and really understand that they have a problem and admit it first and foremost. I definitely have a gambling addiction, but I was forced to quit gambling. I wasn't making the decision on my own. And because of that, I don't know if the rest of my life or until I make that decision, how I'm going to handle it when I come back over the hump of this adversity.
Mm.
Because I say that honestly, and most people are going to look at me and say, well, you're crazy. And I say that because it's easy for me to sit here and say, oh, yeah, there's no way I'll ever gamble again. That's not true. I actually have desire to gamble again, but I own that. But part of my desire is the drive I have, and maybe it's for the wrong reason, but it's the desire I have to get back to where I'm allowed to gamble again, and I am
Mm.
capable of gambling again. And more importantly, I can walk into a Las Vegas or a Monaco casino or the Bahamas, all these places I used to go that I'm no longer welcome. And it's more like a screw you back to them saying, I made it back here and I'm
Mm.
legal, I'm allowed to be here. So maybe the wrong reasons, and maybe that's just an ego, my ego talking, but that's the truth. And I always like to at least tell the truth, whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent.
100%. And I don't think, it's always what we feel is, if that's your truth, there's nothing, it's nothing wrong about it.
Right.
It's just that's how it is. And, and I love that you share that. I love that you're sharing in like, this is whether it's right or wrong, whatever it is, this is my truth. And yeah, I love that. And I think that, because there is a lot of people that would, maybe they would have the intention never to gamble again. And they would say, but when something as strong as, when there's an addiction, it's, there's certain chemicals that are released in that process that, and certain parts of your brain that are activated. So
Right.
there's that desire would be for that feeling again. And so what would you say, if you are aware, is the desire, because I know that you said there's part of it is the choice, and I totally get it, because especially when you've been someone you've driven your life, you've made your choices, you've gone, this is what I'm doing, and then all of a sudden you've got people going, you're not allowed to do this. There is going to
Right.
be that part of you that's like, fuck, you don't tell me what to do. Like,
A
oh, I
hundred
want to do
percent.
this thing.
Yeah.
Like,
No, you're
um,
right.
yeah.
Nobody wants to be told what they can and can't do, especially me. And in truth, to be honest with you, the dopamine rush that I've created in my life, when you bet $4.6 million dollars on a football game, which I did in the 2023 Super Bowl, the Kansas City Chiefs came back and beat the Eagles. And that's the biggest bet I've ever made in my life. So on a 3 hour football game, I had over a $9 million decision. For me, the dopamine rush of that is really hard to replace. Don't get me wrong. I don't know if you ever seen my wife. She's stunning. I mean, she's
Oh,
looks like a
yeah, yeah,
supermodel,
yeah.
right? So I do get a pretty good dopamine rush every day of watching her
Yeah.
without her clothes, to be honest. But other than that, there's not much in my life that allows me to get extreme dopamine rush. And I mean that respectfully because it's really hard to replace that. So for me to sit here and say to anyone battling addiction or whatever, of course, I would love to say I'll never do it again because I know the other side of that is it's not working for me. I've lost a lot of money gambling,
Mm.
and we could discuss that too. But the reality is that I can't sit here and say that because I do have a drive to get back to where I'm able to. Will I handle it differently? Will I gamble to the level I once did? I actually don't think I would. Now that may sound like a gambling addict who's making excuses. So I'm very transparent, but the reason I say that is my value for money today is the best it's ever been since I was probably 12 years old because I lost value for money. I
Mm.
made so much, I made it so easy, and I really didn't respect money. And it's a sad thing to even hear me say, but it's the truth. Because when you make $1 million a month, or bet $1 million on a football game and in a 3 hour window, that amount of money is transacted, it becomes like eating one chip in a bag of chips. It's
Mm.
really irrelevant, even though it's not. Now today, $1 million feels like 100 million to me from before because I'm fighting for my life. I've paid the government just $1.7 million in restitution, and I've had taken home equity lines on my properties. I'm losing everything. I had Rolls Royces and Bentleys. I've had a Lamborghini. I mean, all of those things are gone. Do I care about those things? Yes and no. A lot of people, my first answer is no, but the reality is yes. I'm not gonna lie. I enjoy driving a $550,000 vehicle with shag carpet that's this big. That's you put your feet on it, and it's something I can't describe. Is that my ego talking? Well, of course it is. And the reason I've been successful is because I do have an ego, and that's something I'll work on. I'll always try to. My ego is my enemy. That's a sign I have in my jujitsu studio that I'm honest about to this day. I mean, fighting that ego, it's a positive and it's a negative, right? Like,
Course.
I'm a person that's always believed in myself to the point where, look at my wife, right? She's gorgeous. I went up and hit on her, and a lot of guys hit on her, but I knew I could get her, and I'm not Brad Pitt. I mean, I don't think I'm ugly, but at the same time, I know what I bring to the table as a human being, as a person. And, I've never doubted I've dated a lot of beautiful women in my whole life. And it's not because, I look like Brad Pitt. It's because I bring a lot to the table,
Mm.
in all different facets. And I know that. And I believe in myself. And people, women in particular, love confident men, right? So I've always used the skills and the things that I've learned in life, whether it's business or dating or whatever, to my advantage. And I'll continue to do that the rest of my life. But that ego also can be your enemy, right? I mean, you walk in somewhere and you think your shit don't stink and you need to be humbled. Well, sometimes life will give you some humble pie. And I got it on October 5th, 2023, when I had 8 AR rifles at my chest and I was putting my son in my wife's G-Wagon, and my whole life changed drastically. But that day for me, this is the way I look at things, there's my view, was one of the best days of my life.
Mm.
Because even though I have a memory of my wife being handcuffed and crying, and it's a feeling that I can't ever get back, and it'll hurt the rest of my life. It's also a day where I've become the new human being I am today. And in my book, I describe a sculpture being chiseled. A guy with one of those chisels, and creating this sculpture. And I truly believe that that's happening with me right now. I'm
Mm.
sculpting the version of myself that I've always wanted to be. And this is the first time in my life I've done something that not only am I passionate about, but I believe in, and both people are going to win. I was a commodity trader. Most people lost money trading commodities. It was a dirty business. I didn't like it. I was a bookmaker. I was taking bets, and I had to hope the other person lost money to me. So I was hoping bad on someone else to earn
Mm.
money. Now I am going to be motivating people, speaking on stages, selling my book. People are going to win by listening to me, learning from my mistakes. I don't ask them to be me. I don't ask them to not point out the fact I've made a lot of errors and omissions and mistakes. I have, but if they listen to the message, they'll get something positive out of it. And guess what? I can get paid more money doing what I'm doing now eventually than I've ever made in my lifetime. I believe that because
Absolutely.
yeah, Tony Robbins. I'm not saying I'll be him, but believe me, check back in 4 years. Let's see where I stand. This conversation and this podcast will be something that people will say, "Holy shit, this guy said it and he did it," because
Mm.
I already know that. I already know it, and I believe in myself that strongly.
Absolutely. And the thing is, you've got a pattern of showing that when you say, I'm doing this, even when you were, I think, was it 14 years old when you were selling I can't
Orange County
remember.
Reds, yeah,
Yeah.
uh-huh. Yeah,
I mean, you said, because I know that you didn't share it in this interview, but your drive was you saw your mum working so hard and you wanted to win her this trip. You wanted her to
right,
go away and win this trip. And your driver, it wasn't, it was like, I'm making this happen, and you did. And
right,
then whatever you've chosen to do, and even when you spoke about the job that you're in and working you out from the mailroom, you're like, I'm taking this test. I'm betting my jaw on it. Like, you whatever you've decided to do, it just happened to be that you channeled your energy into something that ultimately, was, I guess, destructive, because there was other things that, factors at play, illegal addiction, all of that. But now you're
right.
channeling your energy towards something else, and you're doing it from a deeper place within you as well, and from a place of rebuilding. Of course, it's inevitable that. you're going to create massive success and change a lot of lives and save a lot of lives.
100%. You
Yeah.
know, Belinda, I'll share with you something funny. So I have a 30-year-old and a 26-year-old daughter, and they, before I got on this podcast tonight, we were having a conversation, and I was making fun of them because they were actually commenting on my Instagram, because I started my Instagram less than a year ago. I didn't have one follower, obviously, and they thought it was weird. Their 50-year-old dad is now going on Instagram and taking a camera and putting it in my face, which is very awkward for me initially. Um, you know, they literally made fun of me. They called me a baby boomer as far as my font. They said my stuff was doing it to this and that. They had all these, reasons why I was going to fail in a nice way. Is basically what they were saying, and they were uncomfortable. Well, I laughed and I said, I have a vision and you'll see. And I'm not saying that I've made this massive social media following, but in 10 months, I have 85,000 followers. And
Mm.
when I post something, it's 30 to 50,000 views on anything I post. I now have people reaching out to me to be affiliates to sell their products. I don't make any money on my Instagram, not yet. And I don't make any money on social media. And I plan to. I'm not going to say I don't, but that wasn't even the reason I did it. The reason I did it was to get a platform to, as I said earlier, give my side of the narrative and actually just defend myself. And the vision I had is to just be myself and put it out there and see
Mm.
what happens, right? And now the vision is paying off. I have a tons of haters. I mean, you should see the comments they make. I mean, they're mean, and someone's gonna be raising my son in 3 months. My wife will leave
Oh,
me. You should hear it. It's
and
dirty.
let me
I,
guess, are they people hiding behind photos of their cat on social
well,
media? Like a look.
most of them are don't have a post, don't have a following, and they create a fake account and they just bash
Mm.
you. They're probably people that some of them I imagine used to bet with me. Maybe we had an altercation in our life. I mean, it's just their
Mm.
way of hiding and just bashing me. But it's okay. I mean, it hurts a little bit. I mean, nobody likes it, but I use it as motivation, like David Goggins. I don't run to it like he does, but I've thought about doing that. He just writes down every hate and literally runs to all these haters. But the reason I mention it is it's the vision I had is finally, 10 months later, 11 months later is actually coming to fruition. And
Mm.
tonight, the conversation with my daughters was a little different. It was
Mm.
instead of making fun of me, they were actually complimenting me. They were on my daughter moved to New York. She was on a subway and someone had my Instagram, one of my reels being played. And, that was their dad. And it was just really funny because, never did they think that that was going to be the case, and I've had some very big people reach out to me. I just did Michael Francese's podcast yesterday, actually, who was a famous mobster and, here in the US. And clearly his family is, crime family of huge ties. He's got a really big following. Amazing man. I had a great time meeting him and being on his podcast. And anyway, so I've done some things with some very famous people outside of the gambling business now. And now it's a whole different world, right? And so now it's just different that they're seeing this transpire. And
Mm.
back to what I said to you a few minutes ago, they don't even understand my vision about being on stage and talking to NFL football teams and motivating people across the country and being a version of a Tony Robbins, let's call it. That's my vision. That's my plan. Will I get there? We'll see. But mark my words, I will get to where I need to be. But the difference here is I have a purpose to my
Mm.
passion. And about 4 years ago, I had a conversation with my wife. We were kind of at our peak financially because my ups and downs were wild. And I had quite a bit of money and I was really empty. I was just really like, I had no purpose. And I didn't know what that meant because I was chasing this, what I thought was my dream, because betting sports, watching sports and betting on it, gambling, is a deadly combo for me because I love both, right?
Mm.
But that really isn't my passion because it's an empty feeling. It's a dopamine rush that doesn't last. And clearly you can't win gambling over the long haul anyway. So that really wasn't my passion or my purpose. I thought it was. And now I've realized that the emptiness I was chasing has led me to where I am today. And even though
Mm.
I'm in one of the weaker moments of my life, in 3 weeks, roughly, I'll be facing a judge to be probably 3 weeks after that reporting to a federal prison. which isn't a crazy statement in itself. I have 5 kids and I'm going to be reporting to prison, but yet I'm in the best mindset that I've ever been in my life.
Mm.
Go figure, you know?
And there's so much power in that as well. And just, like you said, like you've had that all stripped away and then you've gained like what you've gained from it. And I'd love to know as well, what have you discovered about yourself that you didn't know? Like when you're at the height of everything, you would have known, how much success you can create, your version of success.
Hmm.
Um, but having it all stripped away,
Hmm.
I mean, obviously you didn't have everything taken away. You still have what matters, you still have your wife, your
Yes.
family, all of that. So having a lot of the external stripped away, what
Hmm.
did you discover about yourself as a person that you didn't know when you had everything that you had?
I think it's really simple, actually. I was chasing the wrong things, the materialistic things and the things I envisioned that were success are not what I thought. And so,
Mm,
what I've actually developed and learned, and this is something I try to tell everybody now, it's really important, is you in life to find even close to what your passion and purpose are, have to ask yourself this question: how do I define success?
mm,
Probably the most important question you'll ever ask yourself. And the minute you figure out how you define success, you are winning. And for
mm,
me, defining success is health, time, memorable moments with my friends and family, and precious time that I can embrace all that, being present and actually enjoying today. Because when you're continuing to chase something, which in my case was just like a rat race on a wheel, not knowing what I'm really chasing, you really aren't happy. You might seem happy and you might think you're happy, but you're really not. And
mm,
I was guilty of that because I had all these material things and this lifestyle which I'll be forever grateful for because I've done things that no one will ever do for the most part. I mean, some rock stars and celebrities do, but truly, I was doing it at even higher levels than most of them. And
pretty
I
much
mean that
things
because,
that most people watch on movies. Like,
yeah,
yeah,
100%.
lifestyle. Yeah.
Yeah, and very often. It's not like I was doing it once, so I was doing it every 2 weeks. I
Mm,
was on a private jet with $2 million to a casino very often. But I was empty. So my point in that is now that I've defined success for me, I can go achieve it even easier and bigger. And it doesn't really have to do with monetary things. Those things do aid and help and get
mm,
you to being happier and enjoying these moments that much more. Don't get me wrong, if I'm on a private plane or I'm flying first class, it feels a lot better than flying coach, obviously. But is that really the most important thing? No, you can fly coach and go have the even better time. But if you are really happy or joyful, because happy is just temporary, joy is
mm,
more long term. If you really could find joy in your life, then those things that don't matter really matter in a different way. So if I'm flying first class or flying coach, I keep talking about material and money things because that's been me in the last 25, 30 years. So,
mm.
but they aren't really relevant. I do want those things and I'm going to achieve them, but they
Yeah.
aren't really relevant anymore. So when I achieve them, I will appreciate them so much differently. And to be honest, I may not even care about them at all when I actually get back to that level, but it is part of my drive.
Mm, I love that. And I think it's really important, as you were saying, like you've achieved a lot of money and a lot of material things in one way. And there's that saying about money being an amplifier. So it's like if you're already empty inside, yeah, money might temporarily fulfill something, but there's always that need for more and more and more. And as you discovered, like, millions of dollars in a bet, it's like there would have been a time where if the feds hadn't have, like if you hadn't have experienced what you
Maybe.
did, then it would have been 8 million, 10
More.
million, because 4.2
That's
or
correct.
4.6 million would have just been like, I don't know, a million of, like it would have been the equivalent of $50 to a person,
Yes.
who's betting. Um, and so now what you're creating is from a deeper fulfillment within you and from that presence and from the foundations and everything that you've just explained. So the money gets to amplify that. And what I've actually found a lot of times when people have created their version of success, whatever that looks like, legal or illegal. But they've done it from a place of chasing the material thing, chasing the more, whether it's involved, a certain level of addiction or whatever it might be. And then something's happened in their life where
Mhm.
all of that's gone for them to rediscover themselves. What I find the process a lot of people battle with is they start to have a fear of, okay, I've got this presence within myself now, I've got this connection within myself. Yes, I do want to recreate it, but I have this fear that, because the nervous system remembers, and it's like that memory of having all of that, but being a certain way, or not being as present with family, or health suffering. And so there ends up being this sort of period where they're trying to integrate the both and have the both and allow themselves to have both again. How are you sort of, does anything like that come up for you? Like, how are you sort of navigating that to make sure that you've really got the core values that you've really embodied now? And then as you create more, you're really anchored into that the whole way through.
You know, I'll be honest, I think I've been through so much, especially in the last 2 years, that there's absolutely zero chance I'm going to ever put my wife and kids through this again.
Mm,
No way. So I wouldn't allow myself to even ever be in the gray area or do something that's drastically going to put us in any this type of jeopardy. That being said, I can't stop the drive I have in me, and I there's no way to throttle that back, sadly. I wish I could balance myself a little bit better. My wife is really good at balance, so that's why I think our relationship is so strong, because she's definitely great at like trying to put a governor on me. Um, that being said, I'm going to always be who I am, and I believe in that. I just think I was, doing things for the wrong reasons and empty in what I
mm,
was, driving for. Now it's just so different. I really am enjoying and embracing the new version of myself and giving back and inspiring people, helping people learn, avoiding hopefully some of the same mistakes that I've made, catching them early, and truly just avoiding some monumental errors in their life. I mean, I teach something that I learned from someone. It's called the 10-10-10 rule, which I've had on my Instagram, right? And it's true. If you can think about every major decision in your life, 10 days, 10 months, and then 10 years,
I remember
how
you
does this
saying that
decision,
actually. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it really, if you think about it, like, buying a home or getting married, or, starting with the biggest ones, let me think this through. Like, where do I see myself in 10 days, 10 months, 10 years? I mean, the more you apply that to all the way down to the smaller decisions, you really are going to think things through and make better decisions. And
Mm,
I didn't think like that. I thought about every 10 seconds and that was it. So,
yeah.
now that I can apply these things and just have growth of what I've learned, I think I'll make mistakes, but they won't be nearly as dramatic.
Absolutely. And I think that's the thing. It's like, and as we were saying in our conversation the other day, it's really about the journey. It's embracing the journey, and not, the journey versus the outcome. And it's like who you're becoming now in the process of this journey.
Right. Right. Well, if you think about it, I mean, we all chase the destination and we're all
Mm,
guilty of that. But really, life is about the journey. And if you could find that and realize it as you're in the journey, which is very hard to do for anyone, then you're living.
mm,
Because the journey is where everything is. It's all the fun, all the hurt, all the heartache. And, I feel like the more pain and the more triumph and adversity you deal with, the more that journey becomes so much more powerful. And then when you do get close to the destination or even to it, you just really feel that much better about where you've gone. I use the example of Rudy, the movie Rudy. I don't know if you've seen that.
no.
It's a great movie. It's a story of a guy who's trying to play at the Notre Dame football team, and he is not even close enough to be good enough really to be on the team, but he works so hard and works his way and eventually gets on the team, and they even play him in a game one time. And the end of the movie, they carry him off the field, and he is probably the worst football player that ever played for Notre Dame football team. But he is the only player in the history of the Notre Dame team to ever be carried off a field. And it's because of no one has ever worked that hard and shown what he's done to get to that. So he had the
Mm.
respect of every player in the history of that, football team, and let alone that particular year. And so that is my bottom line and the mission. It's about the journey to get to the destination. It's not
Mm.
really, I mean, he never went to the NFL. He never even really played on the team. He just got to play a few downs. But he's more respected than the guy who went to the NFL and played and ended
Mm.
up being the star or whatever because of the what he went through to get there. It's a great movie. It's called Rudy. But
Yeah, I'll definitely
that's
watch.
the same inspiration that we all need is to just continue to push and have the mindset that nothing can stop you. I mean, there are things in life that are unachievable for certain people. Like we don't have the talent or the ability to do.
Mm.
So, that is a fact, right? I couldn't go run an Olympic race right now at 50 years old against a 18-year-old runner who, is at his peak, right? But I sure as hell can do things that maybe he can't do and overcome certain things because it's my mind, right? So, if you could find, whatever it is that pushes you to really, go for things that you don't think you can do, because the minute you jump off the cliff, and I don't mean that in a negative way, jump
Mm.
off the cliff and put yourself out there, you actually find that you have something within you that we all didn't even realize that we have. And that's the
Mm.
truth.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I was going to something I was going to ask you about your book. Um,
Yeah.
so with your book, Recalibrate, so what was your reason for writing it? And what yeah, I wrote it down. And what
Sure.
does it reveal that the media ignored or overlooked?
Well, the reason I wrote the book was the minute I got in trouble with the federal government for the last 30 years, everyone's been telling me you need to write a book. Your story and your life and what you have done is absolutely incredible and insane. I really didn't think that because I lived it for 30 years
Mm.
and I didn't even view my life that way until I wrote it down. And when I wrote a book, I started saying to myself, wow, I've done a lot of crazy, wild things, good and bad. And I
Mm.
couldn't believe actually, truly, it's 16 chapters. And I had so much to say, so many stories. I had to throw out stories that were riveting and amazing stories that never even went into the book because I
Mm.
couldn't have the book's 85,000 words. I didn't want the book to be, a 20-hour read and you could lose people in that. So I had to throw out stuff that I think was really impelling, crazy stories. But my moral in this is that it was very nourishing to put everything down and actually have your life play out, and then kind of felt very gratifying to see my life play out over from basically a baby until 50 years old.
Mm.
And to answer your second part of your question, the media isn't even close. They know nothing about me. All they know is Shohei Ohtani, big gambler, wild stories of gambling in Las Vegas, and really that's it. They did a terrible job because at the end of the day, they want media sensationalized news. And let's be honest, Shohei Ohtani being the best baseball player in the history of the planet, and a gambling scandal that's the biggest in the history, biggest sports betting scandal ever, and then high stakes gambling are what attracts people to watch the news or read a story. So I get that. That's their job. But the impelling part of the story for me is the human element side of being a father of five, having good character, having great people in their life, and overcoming adversity. And that's what my book, it describes the truth, the raw truth of like where I've come from and where I've been. And I do put the bad parts in there. I've had a
Mm.
gentleman put a gun at me. I've been in situations where I've gambled money that I couldn't afford. I've been in situations where I couldn't pay people. I've been in many negative situations because of my gambling addiction or just putting my balls on the line to the point where I was taking bets I shouldn't have. And that's all in the book. And
Mm.
the reason I put that in there, it's very easy to write a book and display yourself like people do on social media, where it's all roses and the relationship's perfect and the husband and wife are so madly in love, and yet the husband is cheating on his wife and sleeping with three
Mm.
girls on the side, and their family's miserable. They don't have a family dinner, but they display all these beautiful things. It's all crap. Mine is not that way. I do have an amazing relationship with my wife, and everything I put is true. But I do believe that social media can be very bad because people are just putting this fake life on there to make it all look rosy. My book is not that way. My book
Mhm.
describes me in many manners of negative things that I wasn't really excited to put down and show the world. As far as egotistically, I didn't want to have a negative view of me, but I didn't feel that that would be accurate. I'd rather just be who I am and let people judge me based on what they at least read, and it's the truth. And I'm not perfect. I've made plenty of mistakes, and guess what? I am who I am today because of those mistakes. So, read it, enjoy it. You want to judge me, you want to hate me, go ahead. That's the way I feel about it. And even my children, like, there's things in there I didn't want them to read, but I was like, you know what? I got to be who I am.
Mm. And how can people get your hold of your book? I'll put a link below as well.
Yeah,
How can people get your
Amazon
book?
is
And I
the
know you've got
best.
an audio coming out as well, haven't you?
Yeah, I'm actually doing the audio next week. I'll have it, the audio should be done. I don't know how long it'll take, but I think a week or two. But basically, my plan is my book will be up on Amazon any day. When this is released, it'll definitely be up. And then my audio should be done by the time you release this as well. And hopefully, everybody will go and purchase it and listen to it or read it, whatever your perspective is that you like better. And hopefully they like it and leave a nice review, because I'm hoping that one day my goal was to be on the New York Times bestseller list. I mean,
Oh,
and
there'll be no
that's
doubt.
something. Yeah, I mean, a really cool achievement to go from somebody who's never written a book and all of a sudden just writing a life story, and here we are.
Absolutely. And I mean, I could literally sit here and talk to you for hours, but I know that, you know, I
Well,
know
here's the good news.
we've already been an hour and a half, and I feel like
You cut
we've been
me.
about 20 minutes, but
Belinda,
I'm not gonna, take the next 3 hours of your life.
No, it's okay. Belinda, here's the good news. You caught me 23 days before my sentencing, right? And I do believe that part two of what happens after the 23 days between, me reporting to a federal prison and all the aftermath and all the media craziness that's going to occur in 23 days could create a part two to this. So I'm happy to do that with you, and we can have a whole different conversation, which will be a lot more information at that time.
That would be absolutely incredible. And yeah, so stay tuned, everyone, for part two. And I will pop below, I'll pop the link to your book. If the audiobook's
Sure.
out by then, to that, your social media and your website. And
I
I
appreciate that.
recommend everyone, go follow Matt. If you take on, fair enough, you might look at his journey and say, well, I can't even in my mind comprehend that. But if you take on his, courage and resilience and showing up, and as he said, running into the fire, you can literally apply that to your own life. And regardless of whatever it is that you're experiencing right now, or that you're even maybe your life's fine, but you've got something you're moving towards, there's more inside of you, and you're letting fear hold you back. Look at Matt and go, if he can show up, and he is literally in the midst of 23 days away from sentencing, and he can show up and he can speak his truth when he's got the world watching and projecting and, spinning whatever crap they want to spin, then maybe I can do it too. So,
Yeah, and I hope so. I truly, I want, even if I touch one person in this interview and it helps, help them in some way in their life, whether it's just mindset of being stronger and or taking a risk, or because I do recommend everybody takes chance and takes a risk, of course, educated risk. But you have to put yourself out there, and you have to allow yourself to be vulnerable. I mean, because to be extraordinary in life, the word is extraordinary. It's not follow the sheep. It's not be normal. It's feeling uncomfortable. It's challenging yourself. And you have to do that. And it's difficult. And that's why people who do it usually end up more successful. So challenge yourself, try it, see what happens. I mean, put yourself out there. What's the worst case scenario?
absolutely. I mean, courage is always rewarded. And as I said in the beginning of this interview, look what happened. Me, some girl from Australia with a little following who hasn't even, I mean, obviously the podcast will be out when this is released, but hasn't even
Right.
started a podcast yet, has reached out and said, and you've, like you said, you've been on some of the bigger podcasts and you're, you know, you've got a bigger following. And I reached out and said, hey, want to be on my
Yeah.
podcast that hasn't even been released yet? And here
Yeah, but
you are.
Belinda,
So
you might develop the biggest podcast in Australia. Who knows? Like, and I give you courage for putting yourself out there. So your message is no different than mine. I'm proud of you. I'm glad you reached out. I really enjoyed, having this podcast with you, and I appreciate your great questions.
Oh, thank you so much. And yeah, just really appreciate your time and your energy and your message. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for following my journey and supporting me and my family. And I truly am blessed to be where I am today. And let's build something strong and keep going.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Belinda. Appreciate you.